Okay, in this video, we're going to take a look at how functions are managed in the 4.0 architecture, because it's also significantly different than how we used to do it previously in the 3.1 design. So if we go to tools, and we can just see that basically none of my functions are stored in the database anymore, okay? And this is basically the idea that anything that might be modeled as a spec in xeto is now going to live in this special project lib, okay? And let's go ahead and see how this works in practice. I'm going to jump to the code app, and we're going to see these are all the standard functions you're familiar with in xeto, okay? For example, add enum points here, okay? This works just like it did before, except in how it's stored. It's not stored as a record in Folio anymore. Instead, we're going to see it's stored in this NS directory. Okay, so this NS directory we saw in another video is storing my libs.txt and my settings.trio. Also, there's a file for every xeto spec. Okay, and the biggest thing that we're doing here in the 4.0 architecture is functions now are xeto specs. So that add enum here, okay, this is the Haxall code. If we actually look at it in here, we can see that it's actually a spec, okay? This is what specs look like in xeto, okay, function specs. So they're basically, it's the name, so it's kind of a global variable, colon the type, which is the function type, and then we're gonna have our signature here. Now, if you're creating your functions in Phantom, you'll actually, this may be statically typed. By default in xeto, in Haxall, everything's just going to be dynamically typed, and you'll see everything is just given the type of object question mark, which means it's basically a nullable object, and we're not giving it a type. And then this little syntax here is basically as setting the metadata tag Haxall on the function. And then these three little lines are what's called the here doc. So everything in here is basically just a string literal. So is that too different than how it might have been stored in Trio in the old architecture? It's just now it's basically stored as a xeto file, and we're mounting this Haxall here as just a tag, a metadata tag. So let's look at the same thing, and we can also look at the same file over here in the specs tab. Okay, in the specs tab, I'm looking at things as xeto. Okay, and notice that here it's a string literal. Like, I'll just change this comment here. Okay, when I save this, okay, I'm actually saving it here to this file on the file system. And if I go back to my editor and look at it, you can see that what this guide is doing is actually now going to that xeto file, parsing out the Haxall and giving me the user interface that I've come to basically know from the 3.1 architecture. Now, the metadata is going to be treated a little different. So for example, there's certain tags, like say super user and admin, that can be used directly in the metadata. So let's go in here and let's actually add some metadata here. And let's say that this is an admin function. Okay. Now admin is defined as a metadata tag in xeto, if you were to go look at the Haxall library. And if I go back here and do edit on this guy, you can see that that admin tag is here. Likewise, if I was to, let's change admin and change it back to super user. Okay. And I go back here and look at the spec, you can see that it's gone in here as metadata. Okay. Now, what's going to happen if I try to do something that's not defined? Like I'm going to add a tag of foo here, for example. This might be just a foo tag in Haxall that you might have used, but in xeto, okay, you can't just use any tag in your metadata unless it's predefined. So if you save here, okay, my whole project library has gone in default because I'm trying to use a metadata tag that's not defined. Okay, and likewise, let's go and look at my namespace app here. You can see that the whole project library is now in error. Okay, now we're not going to do partial compiles for the project library. So if the project library goes into error, then all of your functions are now no longer available. Okay. And let's go look at the code app, and we can see if we go to the code app here, I don't actually have any functions. Okay, the whole project library is disabled right now. Now, there's a lot of tools to prevent you from doing this, but if you get into this situation, okay, you can come in here and edit by hand, or you can use this tab and edit it at the spec level. So if I go back and fix the spec level here, okay, and save that, now my library will go back into the OK state. I can come into the namespace. I can see this library is now in the OK state. And I can come to my code app. I can see I have all my functions. When something is in the error state, you're going to see this orange banner on this screen here. Once again, let's go ahead and create a problem here. Okay, so anytime you're in this banner, you're going to see your whole project library is in an error state. So let's go fix that. Okay, so now that we understand that we got to be careful with what metadata tags we add, how are you going to deal with the fact that you might have lots of tags that you made up using on your functions? And basically to support the old design, the defs design, the way we're doing that is like this. So let's go to this guy and say I did want a foo tag on here. And I'm just going to add a foo tag. Okay. And actually, I'm going to make him a rule on air handlers. And let's give him, he's a Spark rule. Okay. None of these tags, foo, rule type, or rule on, actually have official xeto metadata definitions. Okay. So what's going to happen is, in this view, you're going to continue to use that metadata just like you always did. But if we go look at what's happening at the spec level, you're going to see that it's all shoved in this one tag called def meta. Okay. So really the only things you're going to be doing at the true xeto metadata level is using tags like overridable, admin, super user, and most of the things that you probably have used as tags on your functions are going to get stuffed in here. And you can just make up whatever tag you want in here. Baz and cuz here, and I'll go ahead and save that. And then we go back and here, look at here in this editor, you can see that they're just worked. They're just sort of exposed to you like you might have worked with them before. So there's a lot of side effects across the whole system about your functions not being stored as extensions. And you're going to see there's probably a lot of enhancements we're going to make to 4.0 to fully flush this out. But you can see this is how the basics work. Hopefully you can get your head around this, that basically, once again, functions are now stored in flat files on your system. It makes it easier maybe to manage and get. And then any of your special metadata now is probably going to be put into this def meta, sort of stuffed into that one dictionary inside your xeto metadata.